Once upon a time, in our distant past, the history of our religious forebears, the congregational churches that established themselves on the shores of the Massachusetts Bay Colony that we eventually grew out of here as Unitarian Universalists, once upon a time, being a member of those congregations was no easy task. Was a pretty big deal. You weren't just born into it. You didn't just take a class or two. You definitely didn't just sign your name in a book and bang, you were a member with all the rights and responsibilities that came along with it. No, you had to prove your mettle. You had to prove that you were worthy of membership, of belonging to the community. You had to show that you had had some sort of religious experience in your life, some bright flash of light from heaven had entered your consciousness. You had got religion somehow or another. And it wasn't just enough to say, yep, had the bright flash, I'm ready to go. No, you had to tell the story, and not just to the pastor, not just in the privacy of an office somewhere. No, you had to get up in front of the entire congregation and give your testimony. You had to tell the story of your conversion in order to belong to the community. And I think this is an awesome idea. And some of you are getting nervous now. Those of you who are already members are breathing a sigh of relief that you've escaped this fate. Those of you who haven't made it to your minds yet are sweating a little bit and wondering what you got yourself into. Have no fear. There will be no open mic this morning. You don't have to worry about telling a story. And I get it. This idea of conversion might be a little nervous-making, might get you a little twitchy. It might be one of those trigger words we love to talk about in Unitarian Universalist circles, one of those religious words that we've put behind us, conversion. We don't convert. We just kind of show up and do our thing. We're a pretty relaxed bunch, right? No big deal. I signed my name in the book. That's all I had to do. I am now part of the tribe. But conversion plays a big role in the American religious landscape, for sure. Makes us nervous because it sounds awfully evangelical, doesn't it? Not something we want to start having any truck with, nothing we want to start getting into here in our Unitarian Universalist congregation. One, because that's them and not us. And two, there's really this sense of finality that comes with that word conversion, doesn't it? I converted to this religion. I am done. One-stop shopping. I have made my choice. I have found my way. I am saved. I am enlightened. Hallelujah, here I am. That's it. Which is not how we do things around here. So maybe we don't want to get into the whole conversion business, but for a lot of American religion, that's the whole purpose of the church. It's to convert more members. It's to amp the numbers up. It's to build up the population. Find as many people you can who can say with conviction that they are born again. There's that idea. There's that idea lingering behind that sense of conversion that I know is making us nervous. To be born again. The only necessary transformation in our lives. I was blind, but now I see. I was dead, but now I was alive. I had a conversion experience. I was now born again into whatever is coming next. I'm okay. And I'm willing to bet that for most of us sitting here this morning, you hear that phrase and you gin up a lot of negative images in your head when you think of people talking about being born again into a faith, that there's some shallow self-righteousness that goes along with that sort of faith, perhaps, that there seems to be a lot of hatred, perhaps, in faith life that claims to be born again. Certainly a good deal of hypocrisy if we watch some of our more prominent televised leaders making a claim to some sort of born again experience whose actions don't necessarily, shine a light on what that conversion experience might have looked like or if it was sincere at all. And so among the liberally religious, we reject that notion of being born again. There's just something wrong with it. And we who love our bumper sticker theologies prefer to think of ourselves as born right the first time. My colleague, the Reverend Rob Hardy's at All Souls in Washington, D.C., pointed this one out, his favorite bumper sticker. Especially among the more atheistic and humanist of us, born right the first time. If born again is what is required of religion, we must have been okay when we first came out. And it sounds good, it looks good on a bumper sticker, it makes us giggle, it certainly sets us apart from anyone else. And it's funny, but there's also a little arrogance going on there, don't you think? And a lack of some truth. Because it points to a sense of completion, maybe even perfection, which is not something we should ever be striving for. I talk about human living frequently as living with all sorts of paradoxes, and one of them is the paradox that we know individually that we are enough as we are, and at the same time, we are incomplete beings. Imperfect, constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly changing. Constantly, and just get settled with this for a little bit, converting. Our theme for this month is transformation. And as with the rest of the sermons in this series, we've titled it Seeking Transformation, and I'm going to be honest with you, that title is a bit of a misnomer because we're not looking for transformation as a people. We are transforming constantly. We have no choice. Our bodies grow, our minds mature, and so do our spirits. So it's not a question this morning of whether or not we should transform. It's not an if question. It's a how question. What are we becoming in this constant process of becoming that we go through as human beings? And how do we get there? And this is one of the great questions of religion in general. Who will I be? What will I believe? What will I do? Who will I be? And most of the religions are trying to answer that question by saying, one of us is what you will be. Hopefully, you are coming to us and finding the truth as we have defined it. But can great truth be contained in just one set of religious doctrine? No. Is the purpose of our lives to find small r religion, whatever flavor or brand that may be? The purpose of life, as one of my I've had 2 hours of sleep. As one of my long ago colleagues once stated, the purpose of life is nothing less than to grow a soul, than to engage in that becoming that we are engaging in anyway as human beings. But if the question is, what are we becoming? Who will we become? What are our guidelines? What are our roadmap? What does the liberal religious experiment here say about who we are becoming as human beings? Our Unitarian Universalist values, our principles, what we have to say about living and about being connected to one another, gives us something of a roadmap to who we will be. I talked a few months ago and last month again about the great heart at the center of everything. That sense of connection we all feel. And who we are trying to be, I will posit this morning, who we are trying to become, are people who are fully aware and fully awake to the ways in which we are connected to one another, to the ways which we belong to one another. The ways I belong to you, the way you belong to me, that interconnectedness and mutuality. Because our inability to see that, or our tendency to want to outright deny it, is really the source of so much of the ill in the world. When we stop seeing people as people and start seeing them as things, when we can't see how we are connected and alike and in belonging relationships with one another. Our experiment here in Unitarian Universalism is trying to give us something of a roadmap to getting to that awareness of belonging. Now, I'll be honest, it's a little more of a vaguely sketched out treasure map than it is accurate GPS coordinates, so there is a lot of work that goes along with getting to this sense of belonging, to getting to this place of becoming fully aware and fully awake of those connections and of the way of living that connection demands of us. And it's rather easy in our day-to-day lives to get absolutely frozen, completely paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what our principles and our values ask of us. Inherent worth and dignity of all people? Even them? All right. Now, I'm not even going to start with that today. I'm just going to shut down and just do my thing, and we're not going to worry about that. It's hard to get ourselves moving down the road of this becoming, and there are so many infinite ways to fall down in the process and to completely fail at it. I do it every day. This is my confession time. Smith's parking lot, y'all are things. In your cars, yeah, there are no people behind the wheels. You're all just obstacles in my way to getting some milk. Every day. And then I catch myself being aware of doing this thing and chide myself, and then the next day I do it all over again. I screw this sort of thing up constantly. I narrow my field of vision, trying to look at the connections that I have. I try willfully sometimes to stay dead to the relationships I am in with the people around me, whether they know me or not, whether I know them or not. And this is okay. We all do it, we're all going to continue to do it, and it's okay. Because our failures are about as important as our successes in defining the full boundaries of who we are as a whole human being. And we cannot become the full human we are meant to be without some sort of struggle in the process. It has to be hard work. If it were easy, we would not be coming here week after week, and I would not have to write these sermons. We would all just know, right? The failure is okay. The question is, how will I respond to the failure? What will I do when I am faced with those day-to-day struggles that get in the way of my fully becoming the human being I was meant to be, of our fully becoming who we were meant to be together? In a perfect world, I could just repeat my new mantra of I made a mistake and it was awesome, and move on with life. I could, get to the end of my day and reflect on the day past and look at those moments when I treated you all as things, when I was in this missed parking lot, and try to learn the lesson from that and go to bed with a slightly clear conscience and be able to wake up the next morning fully refreshed and fully renewed with the words of E. Cummings' prayer upon my lips. I thank thee, God, for most this amazing day, for the leafy greenly spirits of trees, and on and on and on, without any effort whatsoever, because I knew what my mistakes were and I knew the lessons I was learning, and I was going to grow that much more that day, and it would just be an infinite progress as I kind of shaved off the margin of error day by day by day by day. And this is not a perfect world, so it doesn't work like that sometimes, but usually not. Nobody knew this better than E. Cummings himself, who was far from the perfect human being, even as he was sprouting off this prayer. He was a womanizer and something of a Joseph McCarthy fan and something of a racist, although that's up for debate when you read the language in his poems. He was far from perfect, and he was a Unitarian, so let's not be pointing the fingers outside the circle. This was one of our guys, struggling day to day with this need to be open to the universe and so much closed-mindedness. The world is not perfect, and neither are we. And our culture demands perfection of us, or at least the appearance of perfection. And so when we make those mistakes, when we fall down, when I feel like running into the back of your pickup truck at the Smiths, we don't want to admit that to anyone else, let alone ourselves. We don't want to acknowledge the places where we freeze and we fall down and we fail. No, instead, we just want to give up the experiment completely. Crawl as deeply into a hole as we can and hide out until it gets so dark we don't know where the light is coming from anymore. And it gets so dark in those moments, we can't seem to find a way out. That most amazing day that we are longing for seems like it's just a fantasy. Thank you, Cummings, for building us up with impossible expectations. The only way out in those moments is grace, which is another one of those words. I know, but my favorite religious concept. For our forebears, it was a very limited, very finite resource, but for us, who are trying our damnedest to be awake and aware of the great heart at the center of everything and to the ways we are connected to one another and their infinity, that grace is a boundless resource. It is the voice of the desert telling us to trust the wind when we're too scared of what the outcome might be, when we're scared of what the becoming might look like. It is the hand that is held out to us at the entrance to that hole when we have screwed up royally and been at our worst, saying, hey, when you're ready, grab on. Someone's ready to pull you out. The voice and the hand ready to pull us back up into that chance for a do-over, that chance to become yet again. It is the voice amplifying and repeating the call of the great heart that I belong to you, that you belong to me, that we belong to each other, and that is just what we are trying to see here and live out as though it were the truth. Which is all well and good, John, but the great heart at the center of everything is an ancient creation myth you just made up 2 months ago, so really what are we getting at here? John David is a Welsh composer and rock and roll musician, born in 1946, part of the Dave Edmunds band, among many other things in the band Airwaves, which was the band he was leading at the time that he wrote the song, "You Are the New Day." The inspiration, he said, was quite simple. I just had a major blow in my personal life and was sitting alone late at night on the settee, feeling very low and watching an ominous story on the news about the very real possibility of a nuclear war. And I started singing a song to the hopefully soon-to-arrive new day like it was an entity that would rescue me from the depths. If the sun came up and the birds started singing as usual, then I could believe that it really was the new day in which life would go on and in which hope would survive. It's an entirely secular song, but it gets used in churches a lot, and it sounds like a psalm. And it's been set to choral settings like what we heard from the King's Singers in the video here. A hymn to the new day. But I like to think that the you that is being sung to in that song is you. I can live on as long as you are there. You are the new day. I will love you more than me and more than yesterday if you can prove to me that you are the new day. That's it. If the great heart at the center of everything is just a story that we are trying to make true in the way that we live, then we're the hands, folks. We are the voice of the desert here. Our hands are the hands of grace at the edge of the hole. Our voice is the wind saying, "It'll be okay. Trust me. I can still see some light. I've been where you've been. Trust the wind and it will carry you, and just imagine what you will be on the other side." We are transforming whether we like it or not. We are becoming whether we like it or not. What we're here to explore today is the what we will become and the how. And what we will become are full humans, fully aware of just how much we belong to one another, and the how we belong to the how we will become is just grace and grace and grace. Our hands and our voices reaching out to one another. Sometimes we will need that sense of grace from others. Sometimes we will be that grace. Every moment is a moment of becoming. And sometimes we can do it and sometimes we can't. It is a cycle that never ends. Until the day we die, we are becoming. And our transformation does not come in one great lightning flash from the heavens, converting us to the truth. It's a very slow process, and it's a step forward, and it's 2 steps back. And it is a never-ending process. Or as Cummings, again, in his imperfection, wrote in the introduction to one of his books of poetry, we can never be born enough. Not just born again once, but again, as my colleague Rob Hardy said, if he had his preference for a bumper sticker on the back of his car, it would be born again and again and again and again. That's what we're doing here together. We are midwives to one another's born again and again and again experiences. We are here to help one another give birth. We show each other the way whenever we can, because we know we are finite creatures and therefore we cannot become alone. And we know that we are bound to one another inextricably, and because of that, we cannot give up on one another. We have to be the hands and the voice of grace in this process of transformation. And how do we do that? Well, it begins with testimony. Oh crap, he came back to that again. It begins by getting the strength and the courage to be able to tell the story of our own never-ending becoming. Not just the lightning flashes of enlightenment and divinity, not just in the stories of friendships and the perfect moments we have had, but also in those awesome mistakes that we make every day and in all that fumbling that we do in the dark when we just want to crawl in the hole. All of that is the story of our becoming, the story of our conversions, our transformation. Not a one-time deal, but a work in progress. Not a requirement in order to belong to this community, because the Great Heart has already told us we already belong to one another. But as a responsibility that grows out of that belonging, to be the hands and the voice, to tell the story of our transformation together. May it be so.